Hi, I'm Joe Murphy. I'm an editor of Compliance and Ethics Ideas and Answers, an online compliance journal. And I'd like to talk today about a new book by Shirley called How to Live Your Best Compliance Life, 65 Hacks and Cheat Codes to Level Up Your Compliance Program. Mary's provided a nice manual of practical ideas. And what I'd like to do is just go through some of these that I found interesting, but I can guarantee you this is just a sample and there's a lot more in her book. One of the areas of great interest to me is having compliance champions, local champions or representatives of the compliance program throughout the business unit. And Mary comes up with, I think, a very useful angle on this, that these positions should be something that people want to hold. They should be viewed as a pathway for advancement in the business. They should have a certain cachet. And I do recall in the past when GE was a dominant player in the business marketplace, that this was true for internal audit in that company, that was a ticket you want to have punched. She also offers insights on personal development, and she quotes one from Walter Johnson, who would make a point each week of asking a new person, someone in another business unit, out to lunch so he could learn more about what was happening in the business. And it's always a good thing to talk with others and find out what's happening. She gives an interesting perspective on exit interviews for your people, for your compliance people. And she suggests asking 3 questions. One is, what should I continue doing? The second is, what should I stop doing? And the third is, what should I start doing? And I would add to that a very good question that I learned from Amy Bernard-Bahn, which is, what is one thing I could do better? She also mentions that my co-editor, Adam Balfour, has a technique that he uses that each month he changes his email signature line to include a compliance tip. She also uses a common term in a very interesting way. She talks about mystery shopping your compliance program. Now, mystery shopping traditionally is what retailers do, where they hire someone to go into the stores, see what the experience is, see what's happening. She suggests a similar state of mind for things throughout your compliance program. So, for example, you might have someone call the helpline to test out how it's doing. And I'd like to mention, in doing this type of testing, kind of ad hoc checking, while there's a major focus today on big data and data analytics, you never want to forget that while quantitative data is important, so is qualitative data. And something as simple as testing one part of your program a couple of times, while it might not be statistically valid, it may give you very important information. Along these same lines, she also suggests asking questions during training sessions. And you could ask what people think of the compliance program, if they know of issues. And it goes to a nice point that things like training can be multi-purpose. So training can also be a form of checking to see what's going on in the program. She also has an interesting discussion about how to deliver bad news. And she talks about one expression that I'm going to quote here. And then the question for you is, do you think this would make the experience better or worse? And the beginning point that you could say to someone was, I know this is not the news you were hoping to hear. So does that help or does that hurt? If you want to find out, you've got to buy the book. And then a point about incentives. As you may know, I'm a big champion of incentives. I think they're crucial for programs. But as Mary points out, you can have small incentives, and these can work very well. She suggests having printed cards that you can use to send notes to people from the compliance office where you point out good things that they did, such as setting a positive role model or being the first person to have all their people trained. And finally, she ends on a point that you would just know would come from Mary, and that is advice that you should be your own kooky self. And there's a real practical reason for this. This is a very serious field. I recall once being in a company where I went up to the executive suite, and as I got off the elevator, one of the managers looked up at me and said, "You're not here for me, are you?" Well, you don't want people to think of you just that way. And so for me, the point I raise with folks is that I'm a ballroom dancer. And when I used to teach at the SCCE Academy, I would always tell people that was a very important part of my bio, and I'd be happy to answer any questions they had about tango, waltz, or cha-cha. So I'd like to say to Mary, thank you for this interesting book. And also, anytime you would like to see a Charleston demo, I'm always available.